Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
There is something about family that makes you ignore red flags, something about shared childhood memories and deep-rooted loyalty that makes you believe that, despite all evidence to the contrary, you owe them something. Maybe it was years of conditioning, maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was just that little voice inside me that kept whispering, what if she really needs help this time? Whatever it was, it kept me picking up the phone every time Sarah called, even though I already knew how the conversation would go before I even pressed answer. Sarah has always been the reckless one, the type of person who can turn a minor inconvenience into a full-blown crisis, and a crisis into a golden opportunity to get someone else to clean up her mess. She's the kind of person who will claim she's completely broke one day, only to post photos of herself at some expensive brunch the next, grinning over a table full of mimosas and lobster Benedict like she doesn't have a single problem in the world. And yet, despite knowing this, despite seeing the pattern repeat over and over again, I still fell for it. It was a Wednesday evening when she called, her voice trembling just enough to sound authentic, just enough to push the right buttons, just enough to make me feel like an absolute monster if I hesitated, even for a second. "Emily, please," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath, like she had been crying for hours. "I wouldn't ask if I wasn't desperate. I just need a little help this month, and I swear, I'll pay you back as soon as I can." I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the pile of unopened mail in front of me, bills that I had to pay with my own hard-earned money, responsibilities that I handled without calling someone else to bail me out. I should have said no. I should have told her that I wasn't in a position to help. I should have reminded her of the countless times she had pulled this exact same stunt before, swearing up and down that it was just this once, promising with all the sincerity of a seasoned con artist that she would pay me back as soon as she could. Instead, I sighed and asked the question I already knew I would regret. "How much are we talking, Sarah?" There was a pause, just long enough for me to know she had been waiting for this, just long enough to make me realize that the tears, the trembling voice, the helpless act, it was all orchestrated perfectly. "Not much," she said, her tone shifting slightly, that first crack in the mask slipping through. "Just a little extra for rent, maybe some for groceries. You know how it is." Oh, I knew how it was. I knew that Sarah had never been honest about money a single day in her life. I knew that she had a history of living beyond her means, of making reckless decisions, and then expecting other people to pick up the pieces. I knew that if I said yes, I was not giving her money for rent or groceries. I was funding whatever latest impulse purchase she had convinced herself she deserved. And yet, against every rational thought screaming at me to wake up and stop being an idiot, I reached for my phone and transferred her the money. Because that's what family does, right? Right? "Thank you, she said, her voice suddenly light, easy, almost cheerful, as if the weight of the world had magically lifted the second the money hit her account. "You're seriously a lifesaver. I swear I'll pay you back soon." I wanted to believe her. I really, really did. But deep down, I already knew the truth. I would never see that money again. I just didn't know how bad it was about to get. I wasn't expecting to see her that day, and maybe that's what made it worse. Maybe that's what made the anger crawl under my skin and settle deep in my bones, turning into something cold, something sharp, something that wasn't just hurt or disappointment but pure, calculated fury. I had been running errands, nothing special, just one of those mindless afternoons filled with grocery lists and small responsibilities, the kind of day where you don't expect any surprises, where you don't expect to be slapped in the face with betrayal when you're just trying to buy milk. But there she was, standing in front of a boutique so high-end that even the window displays looked expensive enough to require a second mortgage. She was laughing, tossing her hair over her shoulder, looking as carefree as ever, holding a brand new designer handbag in one perfectly manicured hand while she chatted with her friend like she had not a single worry in the world. It took me a moment to process what I was seeing, a moment to connect the dots, a moment for the rage to start bubbling in my chest, because I had seen that bag before, Not in person but online, in luxury fashion ads and influencers' social media posts, in places where people with real money flaunted their reckless spending habits. That bag wasn't just expensive, it was obnoxiously expensive. The kind of purchase that screamed, "I don't have real problems," the kind of thing that someone who was actually struggling would never even consider buying. And yet, there she was, standing there like nothing was wrong, standing there like she hadn't just begged me for money, standing there with that smug little smile that made my hands clench into fists at my sides. I didn't even think about it. My feet were already moving before my brain could catch up, my heart pounding in my chest as I stepped forward, closing the distance between us before I could talk myself out of it, before I could let her get away with this one more time. "Sarah." She turned, blinking in surprise, and for a split second, just a split second, I saw something flicker in her expression, something that looked almost like guilt, something that suggested she knew exactly what she had done. But then, just as quickly, she smirked. "Oh, hey, she said, her voice light, breezy, completely unbothered. "What are you doing here?" I stared at the bag in her hand, unable to look away from the expensive leather, the shiny gold hardware, the glaring proof of her lies dangling right in front of me. "You tell me," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "Because the last time I checked, you were too broke to afford your rent. But I guess that was only true until you saw something shiny, huh?" Her friend laughed, and that was the moment I felt something inside me crack, something shift, something wake up that had been asleep for too long. Sarah glanced down at the bag like it was nothing, like it wasn't $1,000 insult sitting in her hands. "Oh, this?" she said, tilting her head slightly. "Relax, Emily. It's not a big deal. You'll get your money back when you get it." And then she laughed. Not a nervous laugh, not an awkward chuckle, not even a forced attempt to smooth things over. No, this was something else entirely, something mean, something cruel, something that made it absolutely clear that she didn't feel an ounce of guilt, that she didn't even see what she had done wrong. That she truly believed I was just some endless resource for her to drain whenever she felt like it. I could have screamed. I could have grabbed that stupid overpriced bag out of her hands and thrown it into the street. I could have caused a scene, embarrassed her, demanded she pay me back right then and there, forced her to at least acknowledge what she had done. But I didn't, because something better occurred to me. I took a deep breath, forcing my heartbeat to slow, forcing the anger to settle, forcing my expression into something neutral, something unreadable. I smiled, and that was the moment I made my decision. Sarah was going to pay me back. She just didn't know it yet. There was a time when I would have confronted Sarah directly, when I would have let my emotions get the best of me. When I would have yelled or argued or let myself fall into another one of her traps where she twisted the situation until I was the one feeling guilty. But something about that moment outside the boutique, something about the way she had laughed in my face, something about the sheer audacity of her dismissing me like I was some annoying debt collector instead of her own sister, flipped a switch inside me. I wasn't going to fight her. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to demand my money back like some pathetic fool who actually believed she'd suddenly find it in her non-existent conscience to do the right thing. No, I was going to do something better. I was going to wait. Because patience is a cold weapon, and when you wield it properly, it cuts deeper than rage ever could. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at my phone, scrolling through Sarah's social media with a calm, calculated focus, looking for clues, looking for patterns, looking for anything I could use. Sarah had always been reckless with money, always one step away from financial disaster, always spending like she had an endless supply of cash when, in reality, she was living paycheck to paycheck, if that. And sure enough, as I dug deeper, I found exactly what I was looking for. Her car. Sarah had bought that car 2 years ago, a shiny, top-of-the-line luxury SUV that she couldn't afford but had insisted she deserved because, in her words, "Why should I drive some boring piece of crap when I work so hard?" Never mind the fact that her working hard consisted of hopping from one dead-end job to the next, quitting the second things got difficult, always blaming someone else for her bad luck. No, Sarah didn't care about being financially responsible. She only cared about looking successful. And that was exactly what was about to destroy her. I kept digging, scrolling through posts, checking comments, piecing together little bits of information, and then I found it. A comment she had left under a friend's picture just 3 days ago, complaining about how she was so over these stupid car payments, and how her bank was being a total pain in the ass about one late payment. That was all I needed. I didn't know the exact due date, but I knew it was close, knew it was hanging over her head like a storm cloud she was desperately trying to ignore, knew that she was probably scrambling to get enough money together before the bank took action. And that was when I made my move. The next morning, I made a phone call, one that took less than 5 minutes but would change everything. I called my bank, the one where I had sent Sarah the money, the same bank where she had an account. I calmly told them that a personal loan I had sent to my sister had not been repaid and that, as per my agreement with her, I would like to formally request a withdrawal from her account to settle the debt. Now, here's the thing about banks. They don't care about family drama, they don't care about who's right or wrong, and they especially don't care about whether Sarah had been planning to pay me back when she felt like it. What they did care about was the fact that Sarah's account was linked to an active car loan, which meant they absolutely had the right to pull money from her balance to cover a delinquent loan agreement, especially since she had already missed one payment. And just like that, her world started to collapse. I didn't hear from her that day, and I didn't expect to. Sarah was still oblivious, still walking around with the confidence of someone who thought she had beaten the system, still living in the illusion that she could manipulate her way out of any problem. But I knew, oh, I knew, that it was only a matter of time before reality hit her like a freight train. And when it did, I was going to be right there to watch. The first sign that my plan had worked came early in the morning when my phone started buzzing nonstop with incoming calls, each one flashing Sarah's name across the screen like a desperate warning siren. I didn't pick up, not right away, because I already knew exactly what had happened, already knew that the storm I had carefully set in motion had finally reached its peak. Instead, I let the phone ring, let her messages pile up, let her sit in the mess she had made, knowing that for the first time in her life, she was going to feel what it was like to be helpless. Then, after at least 10 missed calls, she finally sent a text, one that, despite everything, still made me smirk. "Emily, what the hell did you do?" I took my time responding, sipping my morning coffee as I stared at the message, letting her squirm a little longer, because Sarah wasn't used to being the one left waiting, wasn't used to being ignored, wasn't used to feeling powerless. She was used to controlling the conversation, to twisting words, to manipulating situations until she came out on top. But today? Today was different. Finally, after a few minutes, I sent back a simple message. "I have no idea what you're talking about." Her response came almost instantly, a frantic, barely coherent string of words that practically dripped with panic. "My bank just took money from my account. I was saving that for my car payment. I don't know what's happening, but I need you to call me now." I stared at the message, letting the satisfaction settle deep in my bones, knowing that she had no idea how bad this was about to get. Because it wasn't just about the money, it was about timing, about how one missed car payment was just a small issue, but two meant trouble. Two meant the bank wasn't going to play nice anymore. Two meant repossession was on the table. And Sarah? Sarah had just run out of options. Still, I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a quick answer. Instead, I put my phone down and went about my morning as if nothing had happened, imagining her pacing in her overpriced apartment, imagining her hands shaking as she scrambled to figure out what to do next, imagining the way she was probably sweating through her designer blouse, realizing, maybe for the first time in her life, that she had dug herself into a hole she couldn't climb out of. By the time I finally called her back, I could practically hear the relief in her voice, the way she latched onto the sound of the ringing phone like a drowning person grabbing onto a lifeline. "Emily, oh my God, I don't know what's going on, but I just got an email saying my car loan is past due, and if I don't pay by the end of the day, they're going to start the repossession process." I stayed silent for a moment, letting her words hang in the air, letting the desperation seep through the phone, letting her sit in the very same anxiety she had forced onto me when she took my money and laughed in my face. Then, in the calmest voice possible, I said, "That sounds really stressful, Sarah. I guess now you know how it feels when someone takes money you were counting on and tells you, you'll get it when you get it." The silence that followed was delicious. For the first time, she had nothing to say. No excuses, no manipulation, no fake tears to twist the situation in her favor. Just silence, just a long, stunned pause as she finally understood exactly what had happened. And that was when I knew. She wasn't just panicking. She was terrified. For the first time in her life, Sarah had no response, no clever excuse, no manipulative little quip to twist the situation in her favor, no fake tears to make me feel like the bad guy. Nothing but pure, stunned silence. I could almost hear her brain working, trying desperately to find a way out, trying to piece together some kind of escape plan, trying to figure out how the person she had always treated like a doormat had somehow flipped the script and left her trapped instead. The silence stretched between us, long and heavy, almost tangible in its weight, until finally, she spoke, her voice small, unsteady, laced with something I had never heard from her before, fear. "Emily, you didn't tell them to take the money, did you?" I let out a slow breath, tapping my fingers against the kitchen counter, letting the moment stretch just a little longer, making sure she felt every single second of discomfort before I finally answered. "I didn't have to tell them anything, Sarah. The bank did what they were supposed to do. You owed me money, and they took it from your account. That's how loans work, remember? It's funny, though, when I asked for my money back, you laughed in my face and told me I'd get it when I got it. Well, I guess now you're getting it." I could practically hear the color draining from her face, could feel the panic crackling through the phone, sharp and electric, could imagine the way her hands were probably shaking as she stared at whatever final notice had been sent to her email, warning her that if she didn't come up with the rest of the payment by the end of the day, she would wake up tomorrow morning without a car in her driveway. "Emily, listen. I didn't mean it like that," she stammered, her voice suddenly softer, suddenly smaller, suddenly dripping with the kind of forced humility that only comes when a person realizes they no longer have the upper hand. "I was just joking, you know me. I say stupid things sometimes, but you didn't have to do this, okay? You didn't have to go this far." I almost laughed, almost let out the kind of cold, humorless chuckle that would have made it clear exactly how little I cared about her sudden, pitiful attempt to rewrite history, but instead, I stayed quiet, letting her sit in her own mess, waiting to see how low she was willing to sink now that she had no other options left. And sure enough, within seconds, she started begging. "Emily, please, you have to help me. I don't have the rest of the money right now, and if I don't pay by tonight, they're going to repossess my car. I need you to send it back. Just for now. Just to get me through this. I'll pay you back as soon as I can, I swear." It was almost comical, almost pathetic, hearing her say those exact words, the same words I had once believed when they came out of her mouth, the same words that had suckered me in over and over again, the same words she had used as weapons to keep me under her thumb for years. But this time I wasn't falling for it. I leaned against the counter, tilting my head slightly, letting my voice slip into something calm, something steady, something just sharp enough to cut through her desperation like a knife through silk. "Oh, Sarah," I sighed, pausing just long enough to let the tension build, just long enough to let her believe, for one tiny, fleeting second, that I might actually give in, that I might actually bail her out again. That I might still be the same naive little sister who had spent years cleaning up her messes. And then, just as smoothly, just as coldly, I delivered the final blow. "You'll get it when you get it." I ended the call before she could respond, before she could cry or scream or beg or bargain, before she could sink her claws into me again, before she could turn this into another one of her games. I set my phone down on the counter, exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. Because for once, I was the one in control. And I was never letting her use me again. Some people will never understand the value of loyalty, trust, or even basic decency until they're backed into a corner with no way out, left to face the consequences of their own selfishness. Sarah had spent years taking advantage of me, twisting every situation in her favor, laughing at my kindness like it was weakness, treating me like a personal ATM that she could withdraw from whenever she pleased. But the second the roles were reversed, the second she was the one in need, the second she was forced to feel even a fraction of the helplessness she had dumped on me time and time again, she didn't think it was so funny anymore. The irony was almost poetic. She had mocked me. She had smirked in my face, holding a designer bag she never should have bought, telling me I'd get my money when I got it. But when it was her car, when it was her bank account, when it was her future on the line, suddenly, she expected immediate mercy, expected me to step in, expected me to fix it all for her, just like I always had before. But I was done playing that role. I never heard what happened next, never found out exactly how she managed to get out of the mess she had made for herself, if she even did at all. Maybe she pulled another one of her manipulative tricks. Maybe she found someone else to scam. Maybe she learned her lesson and finally took responsibility for her own damn choices. Or maybe, just maybe, she woke up the next morning to an empty parking space, forced to watch as her luxury SUV was towed away because she had gambled too hard and lost. Either way, I didn't care. Because I had finally learned my own lesson. And this time, I wasn't the fool. Have you ever had a family member take advantage of you, only to act like you were the problem when you finally stood up for yourself? How did you handle it? Would you have done what I did, or do you think I went too far? Let me know in the comments. I want to hear your stories.